Thank you for tuning in to the Shikama Live Show with your host, Shikama. One of the major complaints about the whole pro-infanticide movement that went through with Roe v. Wade, at least today, is that we taxpayers are being forced to pay for, through our taxes, the entire pro-infanticide movement. The government is actually taxing us and forcing us to pay for something that goes against every fiber in our soul, everything that talks about, any religious reaction, any sort of moral reaction to the issue. That is completely brushed aside, and we're being forced to actually pay for the pro-infanticide movement. Anybody who's pro-life then is at a quandary with not only their own moral standing, but with their whole religious standing as well. So we have a bit of news here in Kansas. They passed a law to defund the Planned Parenthood clinics. It seems that Planned Parenthood weaseled their way in to get funded by the local taxes over and above any other clinic. So literally, all the other clinics are falling by the wayside, whether they be for, diseases or regular checkups or something like that. Planned Parenthood was getting special treatment. And if you don't live in Kansas, you might want to take a look at that in your particular state and defund them there also. It makes absolutely no sense that you fund Planned Parenthood, and especially over and above any other clinic. I mean, if you have a bleeding heart for poor people and you want to have a referendum to fund the clinics that help the poor people, I think that's a much better deal than the welfare system, which is actually siphoned off 50% by Wall Street. If this is in your local state, then funding clinics that help poor people is a far better use of taxpayer dollars. As a libertarian, I don't think any of it should be used from taxpayer dollars. But if you are so inclined, funding local clinics that help the poor so they can have free health care. And no, Obamacare does not cover the poor. It's a big, huge lie, and you would have to go through the entire legislation to finally realize that it does not fund the poor. So all of you black people watching, understand that you are being hoodwinked, bamboozled, run amok. So here we have in Kansas, they passed legislation to defund Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion clinic in the United States, and they are squarely set inside of the black and low-income neighborhoods. The infanticide that has happened in the black neighborhoods is 100% of the current population of black people. That is, 50 million babies have been killed by Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood was renamed to Planned Parenthood to make sure that people did not understand, did not remember, and did not realize who the organization is. The organization is a eugenics organization. And if you do not know what the word eugenics means, it means that certain people should be born and certain people should not be born. The founder of what we call Planned Parenthood today, Margaret Sanger, said mongrel humans should not exist. Who's a mongrel human? Black people. So, is it any wonder that we have killed off 100% of the current population number of black people inside the womb? I'm going to do a show to completely dispel the myth that black people and poor people should not have children. I know you've been told something other, and that's based on an economic model that might fit some of the whole racist sort of viewpoints. But I'm going to show you in another video, if you're intelligent enough, and yes, I'm couching this in real words, if you're intelligent enough to follow along, I'm going to show you economically that blacks and poor people should not be killing their babies. That's another video. Here we have the appellate court reversing the lower court. The lower court tried to go against the wishes of the legislature. Now, if it's not unconstitutional, and as we saw in the Michigan case that went to the Supreme Court that banished affirmative action in the state of Michigan, we have courts trying to say through their own personal policies that the legislatures of these states cannot legislate out policies that the federal government favors. Here we have a lower court doing the same exact thing. So these courts are trying to go against the wishes of an entire population, and this is why the homosexuals tried to go to court over the referendums that were pushed through California, stating that they could not have gay marriage. The entire population came out against it, and they went to court instead of going to the legislature. But that's another video as well. Here we have Kansas passed the legislation. We're not going to fund Planned Parenthood. We do not believe that given taxpayer dollars, and anywhere that taxpayer dollars would impact Christians and going against their belief, it is unequivocal that the Constitution says you cannot have church and state. Well, you also cannot punish people for their religion. The country is now 74% Christian. It is the highest it has ever been in the history of the United States. And the population of the United States is now the highest it has ever been in the history of the United States. So having legislation that is completely anti-Christian, and I say anti-Christian because that's really what it is. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. That's what it is. It is anti-Christian. The abortion stuff, the homosexuals, all of this stuff is anti-Christian. And for those homosexuals who want to call themselves Christian, you cannot be sinful and be a Christian. You cannot live in sin and be a Christian. I'm not trying to preach to anybody. I'm stating basic facts. You cannot be an adulterer. You cannot be a child molester and be a Christian. And believe me, some people define their homosexuality as child molestation. For all of you older homosexuals who think you have the definition of homosexuality, you do not. Some people call their homosexuality dressing like a girl. So then some people call themselves homosexuals, and their homosexuality is defined by pedophilia. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say I'm a super Christian and be a homosexual. By definition, under the Christian doctrine, you're not a Christian. Go found your own church. Some people have already. Gay, homosexual men and women have already founded their churches in other cities and states and areas. So let's get back to this. The appellate court upheld the state's, really the appellate court should have said, this does not present a constitutional battle whatsoever. This presents a question of funding. The lower court doesn't have jurisdiction over a state defunding some entity within its borders just because it impacts some stance that the federal government will like the state to take. In reality, the federal government is doing something that is anti-state. And the state and the Constitution is very clear. Any power not enumerated under the Constitution is reserved for the state. Literally, that means that the state has more power over the people than the federal government. The federal government is not the ruler of all. The federal government is supposed to be a very small and limited entity. It is not supposed to be this gargantuan thing that we have today. And for the courts to come in and try and legislate from the bench, literally overturning thousands of people's votes, thousands of hundreds of representatives in their state capitals, is unconstitutional. The Constitution never granted that power to any courts. Never. It's a very slippery slope. We could have, and we've already seen it on the Supreme Court, we could have a situation where corporations are being the judges and are passing legislation directly from the bench. That means that J.P. Morgan could set up judges on appeals courts and the Supreme Court and have them rule in their favor each and every time. And their favor could mean anything from dog food to thumbtacks, anything. And that's what we have. This appellate court, fortunately, sided with the people, sided with the state. You really can't say that you have a leg to stand on when you're the only one being funded by taxpayer dollars. Planned Parenthood really can go take a leap. I would recommend all of you go to your state legislature and tell them to defund Planned Parenthood, because I guarantee you they are getting special treatment under the law. Thank you for watching the Shikama Live Show.